YouTube, it's Tone. I'm back with another one for you. This one is it's a little PDF book that I found online, and it has to do with securitization. So this right here, I don't even know who wrote this. Maybe his name's on it somewhere. Maybe we'll get to it. So, but it's loosely based on Gene Keating's work. And Gene Keating's, if you guys have never heard of him, man, this dude is a savage. He's just a straight savage with the whole game in general. So it said this is a draft version, not to distribute until proof of concept, errors, and things like that. Keep in mind a human wrote this, right? And it's based on somebody else's work, but I already read this whole thing. This shit is fire, so we're going to get into this right now. All right, so securitization, right? What is it? The process of homogenizing financial instruments into fungible securities so that they are sellable on the securities market. So that's what we do with the UCC1 and the UCC3. That is commercial securitization. That is bringing a private contract into the public, making it valid and usable in the public. That's how you get your private credits into the public. We have unlimited credit. So when you do your UCC1, the availability of your credit is going to be the amount of the lien that you put onto your estate. That's going to be the credit that you're able to use. How do you bring your private credit into the public? That is via UCC3. What's it called? It's called the partial assignment of interest transfer. And so you'll see that in the UCC3 sections of the sites that you do your UCC1 on. And so you'll do a partial assignment of interest, which is going to be the interest is the amount of the lien. So that is the amount of credit that you have. And then you bring your private credit into the public via UCC3. And that's going to make your instrument usable in the public. Okay. So here, definitions that you will need to be familiar with and understand these codes and rules. So Article 8, FAS 125, FAS 140, FAS 5. And hang on a second, let me make sure I'm keeping track of these slides. Okay. So FAS 95, 12 USC, GAP, the GAP principles, and the GAS. That's the double entry bookkeeping that these banks keep. There's always two sides to every book. The one that they show you is the public side, and they never show you the private side. But when a transaction happens on either side, it needs to mirror on the other side. That's why when we discharge things, sometimes you'll stop getting the bills, but you'll still see the account looking like it's active, but you're not getting bills anymore. That's because you haven't given them an instrument that's valid in the public for them to offset the public side. So that would be either probably with a 1099A, or you could do a partial assignment of interest and create an instrument with the UCC3 and then go ahead and send that over to them that way, and that would cover both sides. Okay. So colorable law. This is the law that these people operate under. It's basically maritime law, and it looks like the constitutional law, but obviously you know that they write codes and statutes that are contrary to the Constitution, and they can only do that because they're operating from private companies, and they're just basically writing their company's policies out and making it look like law, but it isn't law unless you're doing business with them. Then that's just their policy. But at any point you feel that you're not benefiting from doing business with them, you can go ahead and rescind your contract at any point. So 12 USC 248, 12 USC 1813, Civil Rule 13, Civil Rule 36, UCC 3-309, Title 5 USC 552B4, UCC 2-302, Title 42 USC 4012A, UCC 3-407. So now we go to bills of exchange. So this is just like an example, and they kind of use this and trying to use this scenario as an example of how this shit really works with the bills of exchange and all that. So if I make a picnic table and want to trade you for tomatoes, then we can trade. That's just a private trade. It has nothing to do with U.S. currency, so it's not going to be a taxable event. So next week, if I want more tomatoes, but you don't want another picnic table, you might accept a piece of paper that says, bring this to me and I will give you a picnic table, kind of like an IOU. and you trade for exchange that piece of paper with Jim for a bushel of corn. Jim brings me the bill of exchange and I give him a picnic table. The bill was returned to the creator and the debt is extinguished. So that's kind of a strange fucking example. I'm not gonna lie, it's just kind of strange. But as we get into this book, there's more tangible pieces of information that you'll be able to utilize. So bills of exchange. What if Jim trades the bill of exchange to someone else? He may figure that his picnic table will last this year, and he will get a new one next year. That is fine. Jim has the use of the bill and could even pawn the piece of paper at a pawn shop and make money by placing the piece of paper as collateral for the loan. The bill isn't his property, but he is entitled to use it. The bill is still my property and remains so until the bill is returned to the creator and the debt is extinguished. So the way that you show interest in any instrument is going to be via UCC3, right? And that's how you're going to show interest. That's why you pay interest when you're paying your mortgage and all that. Basically what you're paying for is to show that you still have an interest in the event that took place, which was the transaction that ultimately led to these people selling your promissory note on the securities market and then it ending up in the Securities Exchange Commission's place of business. Right, so then you show interest in the overall transaction by paying them interest. But you can also do that by putting it onto a UCC1 and showing your public interest in that particular piece of property. It doesn't have to be by you paying these people constantly. So bills of exchange. It is interesting to note that under this scenario, I am the surety or the underwriter of the picnic table, and as long as people have faith that I will honor my bill, it is of useful value to others based upon the faith and credit of those in exchange, i.e., those extending credit to Jim based upon their faith that I will perform. It is important to know that the pawn shop is a creditor by accepting my bill and extending Jim credit based upon their perceived value of my credit. They have the right to redeem the bill with me if Jim defaults. By connecting the dots, you can see that I have traded my labor for an interest in Jim's enterprise as long as he is responsible to the pawn shop. Since it is my bill, I could call it due and redeem the bill from the pawn shop for a picnic table. Presumably, the pawn shop would agree, as it is likely that Jim, some fraction of the generally accepted value due to this risk, and they could sell the picnic table at a profit if Jim defaults. But Jim could pay the pawn and still get the table from them under the terms of the pawn. The key is here, is that the bill is mine and I can extinguish the bill if I knew where it was. So basically, you're going to keep your interest in that instrument by claiming it on a UCC1 or a UCC3 if it's your instrument that you created. You're going to have to show interest in it and ownership by doing that. So, bills of exchange. Even though the bill looks like an IOU, I am the creditor to the pawn shop because it is my credit worthiness that allowed the pawn shop to extend credit to Jim. If it was not entirely Jim's credit worthiness. The pawn shop is the same position that the Federal Reserve takes when they accept your signature on the private side and issue public funds to the bank. Now, what they mean by this is when you go into a bank and sign to get a loan, you're the only one that signs that piece of paper. They're not the one signing it. So not only do they securitize that instrument, they also have a direct link to the Treasury Department through their private side, the TTL department, or the department that deals with the receivables and securities. These are the people that are going to get the wire transfer for whatever the amount that you loaned to the bank. The bank didn't loan you anything. The amount that you loaned to the bank, and then they went ahead and forwarded you the funds afterward. That's why it takes a couple of weeks for them to for your loan to go through, because they're waiting for that wire to come through from the Treasury Department. So the pawn shop, again, the pawn shop is in the same position that the Federal Reserve takes when they accept your signature on the private side and issue public funds to the bank. What they're doing is a revenue, okay? So they're changing the venue from private credit, which is your signature, and then they're basically creating public funds off of your signature. Banks cannot create money without you. So they change the venue from the private side to the public. The Federal Reserve has agreed to accept the signature on the private people for whatever they want if the people go through their licensed intermediaries, which are the banks. But this is also bullshit because you can go directly through the Treasury Department by creating an account with them. All right. If you look at the One Man Out book, and forget the fact that he did all that to get himself out of jail. What he ultimately was doing was creating a private bank account with the Federal Reserve. I mean, with the Treasury Department, just like I did, and that's how I operate as well. Okay, so it isn't public, and nobody's going to be able to type in and see what's in my accounts or anything like that. This shit is all private. It's all private ledgers. The Treasury knows what I have and what they owe me, and I know what I have and what they owe me. So the banks have agreed to withhold access to the private venue for incompetence by their license agreements. If you are incompetent, not creditworthy, they will decide how much they will loan you in the public. And so that's what happens is that when you're in a position where you have to go through the banks, that means that you're not competent to handle your own affairs. So you're gonna have to go through them, and your credit is gonna be based on their company policy as to what they lend incompetent people when they come to them and ask for credit. All right. So the banks must report all transactions on this change of venue to the Federal Reserve, as the Federal Reserve knows that you should redeem your credit and they will give it to you when you are deemed competent. They have an awesome accounting program that they have developed internally called, not surprisingly, the Internal Revenue Service. That's the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service. And so these are some conversations that I've had with my clients and shit as well, and just trying to let them know that the IRS is not your enemy. They are simply a revenue service, and they are revenuing the money from paper to digital and things like that. All right. So basically, the IRS works for you because the Treasury is the country's bank essentially, but it's also a private company as well. And that's why they pick and choose whoever they're gonna deal with and shit like that. Is it fair? No, but life ain't fair either. What the fuck you gonna do, right? So bills of exchange. An understanding of fractals is helpful at this point, but essentially nature performs the same function over and over again in repeating patterns. The monetary system is based upon this concept. Everything is returned to the creator, and this is what you should know too. All right, so even the promissory note that you sign with the bank for whatever mortgage and all that, that shit is supposed to come back to you after it's all said and done. But they never can give it back to you because they sell it off on the fucking markets as soon as you turn your back. All right. So everything is supposed to be returned to the creator, which means that all the interest and profit made from that particular transaction that you'd had with that company or your employer or anybody that you gave your social security number to, that is all supposed to come back to you. All right. So you were created by something, and you will return to the creator when you are extinguished. And that's a fact too. All right. We're not from here. All right. And so when we leave, we go back to where we came from. So during the time that you are here, you get to borrow everything that has been created. But since you didn't create it, you don't own it, you just get to use it. And that's really what it is. That's really what it is to be wealthy, is to own nothing and control everything. And that's why you should be operating out of a trust. And right here it says, so it is like a trust. The creator is the grantor, and you are the trustee, entrusted with the use of the planet and are responsible for the care of it. Children are the beneficiary of this trust. Once they become competent, they become trustees as well. If they do not become competent and do not manage their affairs consistent with the care of the planet, the fractal nature of nature is what they will create conditions which accelerate their demise, much like yeast cells that overproduce alcohol and cause the culture to die. The money system is the same way. It will fail, and there are no responsible people as we have today, and the warning signs are very clear. And I mean, you can see that these people are really up to a bunch of fuckery. They've lied to everybody, and nobody knows what the fuck is really going on. All right. So bills of exchange. The government has adopted a similar strategy for the monetary program based upon exchange of energy inputs. Your energy is exchanged for something of value. You have the unlimited right to contract, and you can place a value on your labor and the price you will pay for a car. Now let's examine the essence of the currency system by recalling the picnic table scenario, which I don't like the fucking picnic table shit, but this is what this guy used. So if I am the government and I want to increase the ease of commercial transactions or trade, I may offer to create uniform bills of exchange if the people agree to it. The value proposition to me is that I will charge a fee for my energy in creating and managing the units, and the people will benefit from not having to lug around heavy gold, silver, or picnic tables to conduct the trade. And he should have just used pieces of gold as a fucking example instead of a fucking picnic table, because that shit is stupid. But anyway, so we'll just call it pieces of gold. So, and I mean, ultimately, even if we went back to the gold standard, really nobody's gonna be fucking carrying book bags of gold around and shit. Ultimately, it's gonna go back to securities that are making reference to the gold, which is what the money used to be, redeemable in gold, but it's not anymore. It's fiat currency, same exact color as monopoly money. You can look it up. U.S. currency is the same exact color as monopoly money. So it speeds interaction for gold builders, as they do not have to search to find a trader for the gold. They pledge their labor in return for stable currency that allows them to quickly obtain what they need by passing the buck, as a representation that they are a productive member of society since they have obtained units somehow. And I mean, when you understand what this really is, I don't think that it means that you're a fucking productive member of anything because you have fucking pieces of monopoly money. Because you could have just fucking printed that shit out just like these people did. Does that mean that they're worthy because they have a printer to fucking print this money out? Absolutely not. So, bills of exchange. Monetary policy is based upon scarcity. And if sand were money, you would need to bring a dump truck to trade for a kernel of corn. Nature is based upon abundance. How much do you pay for the sunlight and the water that grows your corn? It is free from the Creator. You trade your labor for the care of weeding the field, and you can sell the free corn because you are labored to ensure a responsible trustee when the crop comes in. There is a balance between the two. Monetary policy is based upon productive, responsible trustees to create value. Monetary policy equals scarcity. It is a construct or an idea, and it is a fiction. Nature equals abundance. It is tangible and non-fiction. If you operate in nature and trade your crops for chairs and things that you need, you don't need a unit of credit, which means that you're basically operating privately. If you operate using the fictional idea of money, then you must obey the fictional rules of money just as you must obey the rules of nature to grow your corn. And that's what it is too. So keep in mind that, when you're out here using the fucking fiat currency that these assholes created, then you're really going to be bound and subject to the codes and statutes that surround these pieces of commercial paper, okay? So you don't just get to do whatever you want and then fucking tell these people to fuck off when they come and tell you that you got to pay taxes and shit like that on it, because you do. Because you're using their fucking green, monopoly money, right? So bills of exchange. But look, so even if they tell you that you gotta pay taxes, then everybody's using fucking monopoly money. That means that you can pay them with a fucking piece of monopoly money too. You don't gotta pay with money out of your pocket from your labor. Just keep that in mind, alright? So bills of exchange. Let's say that I, the government, am appointed to manage the money system, or I appoint someone there to do it for me. The thing that we would have to decide is how many units to create. Do we create as many units as there are grains of sand, or do we create 1 unit per person? Assuming that everyone is equal, the presumption of the Constitution, we may start off creating 13 units for 13 people I have in my government. The people have created the authority for me to do this, so technically it is their will and their property if they ask for it. They can trade these units amongst themselves, and at the end of the year, just like the game of Monopoly, there will be a temporary uneven distribution of units to those people who have learned how to cater to the needs of others. Which basically, when you become a member of society and know how to serve people and become of use and of service, then you get a lot of those pieces of paper. Okay? So basically that's how you can gauge your value and your basically your value, right? It's going to come down to how many pieces of paper you have, and that's going to be, ultimately come down to what you're able to do, right? And what value that you can provide. So this distribution is based upon the vote of the people. If they value tulip bulbs, then tulip growers will end up with a disproportionate amount of the units. If people value Elvis Presley songs, Elvis gets his due. The system doesn't care who you vote for. You have the unlimited right to contract for services. Everybody gets what they want, and everything is in balance. And so that's basically how all of that's going to be working. So bills of exchange. Since I don't know how productive each member will be, I will issue additional credits to each member of my society upon their pledge or their signature. If they will go through an intermediary bank, who I will delegate the responsibility of blocking credit access to this private side of the ledger for incompetence. I can't have the children getting whatever they want if they are not responsible and competent. Once they claim their exemption, which requires a fair amount of competency, they are deemed to be competent and will be deemed to have reached the age of majority and can join the free society and be a trustee slash beneficiary to the commonwealth of the society or the commonwealth. So, right here it says when they claim their exemption. Now, when you look at Magic Money #1, that's the book that I created. And mind you, I didn't come up with any of these concepts. These are all things that I learned along the years of my studying. That's what the books came from. I didn't create any of this shit. All right? So, when you look at Magic Money #1, it shows you how to claim your fucking exemption. And that will show that you have reached the age of majority, basically saying that you understand how the whole game of Monopoly works. Okay? So, bills of exchange. What happens when 13 people become 26 due to childbirth? I need to create more units so each of the children will have their unit too. I will need to track the birth levels in each country, and I recognize that the children will probably not be productive until they are 18, so I may just create 18 units per child as soon as they are born, and assume that the child will be grateful that I, the creator of the money, advance these units, and they will return their labor via a pledge from their mother to me. And I mean, ultimately, man, we all have a role to play, man. We came here to play the game, so fucking play the game. You don't got to be mad at it, but that's all part of the process. You know what I mean? When you first figure all this shit out and you get mad at them for making it how they made it, but ultimately, you're going to realize that you're the one that's been playing the game wrong, okay? But when you learn how to play it, it's actually pretty fun and it's actually pretty funny. So since the child is not going to use all the 18 units right up front, I may place the units in trust for the child and allow the child to claim when they need them. But in the meantime, I will invest the unclaimed units in highly productive assets for the good of my nation. And this is what they do with your birth certificates. That's why all the birth certificates that you go get from the Department of Vital Statistics, and they print them out, they're going to have serial numbers on them because those are all bonds. And you can pull those out from the Department of Vital Statistics from wherever you were born. And you pull those out, your social security numbers connected to your birth certificate, and they all have value. How much value do they have? Whatever you say they have. They do actually have a value because they have been traded on the market. Not going to lie to you. But it's a little bit difficult to find the actual value because they're all pooled into a bunch of units that have other people's birth certificates pooled up with them, and they're all sold on the market and used for different investments around the world and things like that for the benefit of the nation as a whole. So what we do is we go get our birth certificates and we create a value and we do a UCC1 on them and we create our own private master file instead of going to find theirs and robbing them of all the shit that they've been working on for you since you were born. All right, it's not a fucking scam or a pawn or any of that fucking nonsense. It literally is for the benefit of the whole nation. Do people use it for fucking nefarious things? Absolutely, because there's some grimy motherfuckers that are in the government. But fuck all that. So we just go and do our own shit. We do the UCC1 and the UCC3. We use the birth certificates. We place a value on them. And then we send a bond to the Treasury Department and we do our private banking this way. Okay? So, if they are exceptionally productive children like Bill like Bill Gates. Bill Gates isn't even a fucking real person. So I may find that they have produced for the nation or the government far more than the original 18 units, and they are entitled to the additional private units created if they ask for them. I will withhold this credit for incompetence. See IRS regulation. And so that's what they do. They're not just going to give it to you just because you fucking ask for them. And if you find some type of scam that fucking allows you to get that, you're probably going to end up in jail, bro. To be honest with you, because you're really just robbing them is what you're doing. So don't fucking do that. We create our own value with the UCC1 and we do our private banking that way. We're not stealing anything from them and we only take out what we put in. Because you can't get something if you never put anything in. Don't be a fucking asshole. So bills of exchange. I presume that they were asked for them when they reach the age of majority and are competent to make decisions. If I don't hear from them by the time they are 18, they are presumed incompetent, and I will withhold their access to their private credits, and they are not responsible, and I may presume that they must have died. I will begin to probate their assets that are in their account for the good of the public rather than waste the units as they have been brought from the private into the public, and the investment is needed to offset interest being paid since I cannot count on any productive labor from a dead or incompetent body. I will place the extra units in a CAFR fund. They are incompetent because they are creating more debt by not discharging or extinguishing their bills. And that's why everybody's supposed to be creating their own money, not using Federal Reserve notes. Okay? So I have chartered the banks to return abandoned units to me, and I will extinguish the debts myself after giving 36 months to the creator to extinguish the debt on their own. I will continue to withhold access to their private credits to the incompetent people. And they do hold your fucking private credit from you. And really, I mean, you're not worthy of it. Because what would you do with it anyway? Probably go do some fuck shit, to be honest with you. Nobody's going to have that, all right? So, bills of exchange. Incompetence in the public further demonstrate incompetence in a fractal way by financing their own demise. Nature has a way of doing this. Consider your actions at the store when you must choose between $2 factory raised eggs and the $4 free range eggs. If you live in scarcity, you may choose the eggs based upon the price, not the nutrients. In your retirement fund, you invest in Halliburton because you want a 20% return on your money. You get the kind of government that you deserve because you vote for it every day with a representation of your energy. In the theater of mind, it is not survival of the fittest, it is survival of the reflected. The world is a reflection of our collective choices, and if you are not reflecting on your decisions, you are controlled by the side of the mirror, the reflection of your shadow. So these are things to keep in mind, right? And so this is why you really can't get mad at anybody, because you are a fucking amazing manifester, and you have manifested everything in your life up till this point based on whatever you think about. So there's nobody to blame. So bills of exchange. So what kind of world are you creating? Are you controlling or letting it control you? In the system, exactly what do you create? So bills of exchange. Analogous to the gold scenario, you may not create picnic tables, but you are ultimately the creditor. Banks cannot loan their assets by law, so what exactly do you create? You create money, and you do. So when you go to a bank, you are an authorized representative of the bank to create money. Your signature creates the money that allows the public to exchange units. If you created the money by your signature, it is just like creating a picnic table or a piece of gold. It is your bill and it must be returned to you. Now, back in the days when you used to write a check, you used to get the canceled checks returned to you in the mail because all of the instruments that you create have to go back to the creator. And they don't return them anymore. What do they do with them? They sell them in the securities market. So they're fucking intercepting all of your, basically your bills of exchange or your checks or anything of that nature. They're intercepting them and they're selling them on the open markets or the securities markets, excuse me. So, but those are supposed to come back to you because that completes the cycle. So, bills of exchange. That is an exceptionally simplistic overview of the nature of fiat currency creation, but the important thing to understand is that currency is a fractional version of nature. And so that's what we do is fractal banking as well. So every time you create an instrument, the bank gets to 10x it, 9x it, or 10x it for you. And so, I mean, it's the same thing whenever we create the money orders and send them over to the Treasury Department. They can take them and cash them in, and they can 10x them and all that too. So they can go ahead and lend out more money to fund all the nonsense that happens in this fucking country. You know, but somebody's got to do it, right? So like electricity. It flows like currents in a river, and flow is corrected by banks. If you resist the fictional rules of fictional money, then you are a resistor, and you will be charged and brought before a circuit court. The bank will correct you. And if you do not discharge the counterclaim, the matter, you will be placed in a cell until the energy is returned to the source of the creator, you. Otherwise, you are grounded. And you see how that shit all basically is fucking electrical terminology. Alright? So if you don't understand public and private, look at the dollar bill and see that you have been given notice that there are two sides to a dollar bill. It is good for all debts, public and private. So let's look at the second level of currency creation, securitization. It is called that because it is based on your Social Security account, which has two sides to it, a public and a private side. The SSN number is public, the red numbers on the back are the private numbers. Incompetents operate in the public, and competents operate in the private. So when you look, you know, even the line that you sign on your Social Security card, when you look at that line, it actually says authorized representative, and that's the line that you sign on. But it's in micro font, so it looks like a line. But go ahead and look at your Social Security card and the line that you signed on. Get a fucking a magnifying glass, and you're going to see the line that you signed on actually says authorized representative. It's not a line at all. Okay? And so on the back side of that, you're going to see some red numbers. Those red numbers are going to be a routing number to whatever bank is holding the fucking account. And so when it comes to fractal reserve banking, for any one piece of tangible property, you can monetize it up to 10 times, which means that you can securitize it up to 10 times. That's why for your particular life, you can get only 10 Social Security cards if you ever lose them. And when you get another one, it's going to have the same number on the front, but a different number on the back because it's a different bank that's holding it. So there's 10 different Federal Reserve banks there. And so each of them get to securitize you. All right. So when you sign a mortgage note, it comes under UCC Article 3. It is a cash payment. It is the money for the house. A security is an interest in future payments. A financial instrument that represents an ownership position in a publicly traded corporation or stock, a creditor relationship with governmental body or a corporation or bond, or rights to ownership as represented by an option. A security is a fungible, negotiable financial instrument that represents some type of financial value. The company or entity that issues the security is known as the issuer. Definition of securitization: the process through which an issuer creates a financial instrument by combining other financial assets and then marketing different tiers of the repackaged instrument to investors. The process can encompass any type of financial assets and promotes liquidity in the marketplace. And so, I mean, this is essentially what is going on when you go and sign a mortgage note. You're basically lending them the money, but they're not going to tell you that shit. All right, so this is where we're going to wrap this shit up right here. So, you know that it's a game of chess. Stop playing checkers with these clowns. That's what I got for you for now. Until we meet again.